Despite the melting of glaciers, scientists have come to the worrying conclusion that in the near future, humanity will have to drink recycled sewage. We will get to the point where the liquids in our sewage systems will be a much easier option to treat than finding and developing new water sources. In 2008, the Canadian company Element 4 introduced its revolutionary water mill, which extracts moisture from the air and turns it into clean water. It is compact, designed for home use, and produces 12 liters of water in 24 hours, which is piped straight to the kitchen tap or fridge where it is stored. Great device, but is it really innovative? Has the company Element 4 taken inspiration from some ancient Easterners? Is it a coincidence that we find a description of a very similar device given as early as 1886 and used not anywhere but in mythical Atlantis itself? Was Frederick Oliver a prophet, or did he really receive channeled dictations from Philos Atlanta? Because the coincidences don't stop there. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1866, his parents took him to California when he was 2 years old. Before he began recording Philo's dictations in 1884, Frederick's education was relatively limited, and he had little knowledge related to the occult, Atlantis, or technology. By his own account, he lacked will, perseverance, and energy in his studies, and therefore achieved almost no educational triumphs, for which he was more than once severely criticized by his teacher as idle and even lazy. But when Oliver is 17 years of age, all this will change, and some of the most ancient and unattainable secrets of mankind will be revealed to him, for Philos the esotericist will take him actively under his guidance and make him his instrument of communication with the rest of the world. Philos the Tibetan, as the ghost introduces himself, is a former inhabitant of the lost continent of Atlantis. He initially educates Frederick for a year through thought talks. The young man's mind is so obsessed with the new knowledge that he stops paying attention to his surroundings, begins to work automatically if at all, stops learning and reading, almost losing touch with his external senses. Then his parents, who were by nature very liberal, decided it was time to intervene. Frederick's father decides he must stop this intellectual disability. Actually, the young man hadn't said anything to his parents up to this point about talking to his mystical mentor. Under parental pressure, he shares about his secret. His parents, however, are very broad-minded indeed about the times in which they live and express a desire to get to know the mysterious stranger. He, however, did not wish to reveal himself, but allowed their son to quote his words, conversations, and addresses to them. Over time, Oliver became so proficient that he could repeat what Philos said almost as quickly as he spoke it himself. Around 1883, the Atlantean began making the boy write down what he told him. The information was given at intervals of several weeks or even months at first, sometimes dictating only 1 or 2 sheets, and at other times up to 80 sheets of information were written out in a few hours. Sometimes the tutor would wake Frederick in the middle of the night, and he would write by the light of a lamp, and sometimes even without light in the dark. It was not until 1886 that the main work on the manuscript was done. Philos then had the young man revise what he had written under his guidance. In 1894, the manuscript, exactly as completed in 1886, was transcribed on a typewriter in duplicate by Mrs. E. Moore of Louisville, Kentucky, and Moore's copy has never since been altered by even one letter since it was written, and there is extant evidence of this. Throughout the time from the manuscript's completion in 1886 until 1899, when Oliver died of tuberculosis, he was unable to publish it. His work was rejected by publishers, and the only way to get it published was for him to finance it himself. Sadly, this did not happen due to his untimely death at the age of only 33. After his death, Oliver's mother vows that she will find a way to publish the book at any cost. But now left on her own, she faces the same vicissitudes until she receives a mysterious anonymous donation of a large sum of money in 1905. Thus, in the same year, the book The Visitor of Two Planets was successfully published. During this period of nearly 20 years between writing and publication, many of the things referred to in the book in the form of scientific and mechanical rediscoveries had already been accomplished. Some of the high achievements of the Atlanteans, lost for thousands of years as a result of the absorption of that great continent, have been revealed, confirming the author's prediction. This is evidenced by the discovery of the Roentgen ray, which was not even thought of in 1886, but in the book we find a long treatise on it. We find wireless telegraphy, which is also a fact today. In fact, it is a small part of the predictions of the imminence of what the author calls the rediscovery of the secrets buried with Atlantis. Philo argues that we, as receding Atlanteans, are going beyond her fallen greatness, and that by slow, systematic steps, we are approaching to surpass even those wonderful achievements as the ever-expanding and growing minds and souls of men climb ever higher in the circles of evolution. In fact, the manuscript refers to Atlantis and presents a first-person history of Atlantean culture, which had reached a high level of technological and scientific advancement. It reflects the personal history of Philos and a group of people with whom he interacted closely. From the narrative, we gain insight into the social, economic, political, and religious structures that shaped Atlantean society. Intriguing are the descriptions of the daily lives of its citizens, which include anti-gravity-powered aircraft and submarines, television, wireless telephony, overhead water generators, air conditioning, and high-speed railways. The manuscript begins with a highly detailed description of Atlantis, which is presented as an empire whose subjects enjoy the freedom allowed by the most limited monarchical rule. The law allowed any male subject to rise to office. Even the emperor held elective office, as did his ministers called the Council of 90, or the Princes of Rian. The possession of elective power was vested in the two great social divisions, which embraced all classes. The basic principle of the political structure of Atlantis was the educational criterion. The two main social branches were known by the characteristic names of Incala and Sayokwa, or priests and scholars respectively. The description of Atlantis is extremely detailed, and one video alone will not suffice. But if you would like us to expand on the topic, let us know in a comment. Let us now focus on a few interesting descriptions of technologies. Frederick Oliver, more than 100 years ago, discussed in his manuscript the question of what would happen if we could see and hear our interlocutors without distance being a factor. According to him, the solution to this is, quote,
wirelessly and with the help of the Earth's magnetic fluxes.
But he goes on to say,
so we would be able to respond to any commercial inquiry, and in a state of war, we would be able to send an army to the other side of the world in less than 24 hours.
Written, published, and copyrighted back in 1905. Agree it would be a very big coincidence for a poorly educated 18-year-old to possess such visionary powers. But let's say it is a coincidence. We keep on reading.
The emperor sat and listened to a melodious voice coming from a box, telling him the news of the day. Suddenly, the monarch reached over to the box and turned a small key, which jingled. The voice of the unseen speaker fell silent for a second. Then I realized that, for the first time, I was hearing live the news bulletin I had been hearing for a long time.
It should be noted here that the first commercial radio station in America went into operation 34 years after the manuscript was written and 15 after it was published. But let's continue with the flying aluminum spindles of 12,000 years ago in Atlantis that flew without wings and a fuel tank, the manuscript explaining that this was due to playing with magnetic levitation. They were illuminated inside with electricity and could both fly in the air and float underwater. They were equipped with crystal windows with incredible resistive qualities. More interesting is what the Atlanteans did while traveling. According to the manuscript, they read books, listened to music, and talked on their wireless video phones. The only discomfort came when it was very quiet because the air conditioning was humming very loudly. The book is filled with a countless number of other techniques that we have only gotten to grips with in recent years and others, which we have not yet. As we like to say, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, but 3 times is on purpose. Is it possible that Oliver really was in contact with an ancient Atlant? And what do you think about the possibility that the Atlantean was actually very real, but telepathically relayed the information to the young man, so as not to be physically detected? Of course, there is also the possibility that Frederick had an innate talent for writing science fiction novels, yet the hundreds of mentions in this book appearing decades later leave a big question mark. But Oliver's manuscript is not the first to present advanced technologies and discoveries long before they took place. The Hindus did that thousands of years ago. They hid the truth of our existence and much more knowledge in the cipher of the Vedas. But to learn more, click on the video you see on the screen.